Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get to one of the more interesting panels that we are going to have here today. We're going to be looking at Islamic finance and angel investing. It's been noted that angel investing is 100% compatible with Islamic finance, and yet it is a completely underserved area. And so we're going to find out about how we can do something about that. We've got kicking off our panel is Kaiser H. Nassim. He is the head, and I'm going to get this right, IFC Banking and Digital Finance Advisory Services, Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia. Based out of Dubai, although he's been based all over the world. Thank you so much for hanging in with us today. Thank you very much. Joining him today is going to be Sheikh Ibrahim bin Khalifa Al Khalifa, the former Minister of Housing, Chairman of the Accounting and Auditing Organization for the Islamic Financial Institutions from Bahrain. Thank you very much for joining us today. We'd like to welcome Meliska Utku, Chief Executive Officer of Al Baraka Turkey. If you could come and join us on stage, that would be much appreciated. Thank you very much, sir. And as well, the Regional Director for the Islamic Development Bank Group Regional Office in Turkey, Hamad Zafar Handel. If you could please join us, sir. Watch out, there's a big boom swinging over your head. Very exciting times here. There we go. Kaiser Nassim, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see Bebars here, but I would like to add my congratulations for organizing such a wonderful conference. And as we heard before lunch, this session is something new in the world of angel investors. And we brought it in 2018 because what the angel investors are trying to do is, while they're expanding their network, how to tap into a very fast growing market. And as we all know, the Islamic financial market has been growing in double digits over the last 5 or 10 years. And the total assets today globally are about $2.5 trillion US, which is just 3%, by the way, of global banking assets. However, it's been growing at 18 to 23% over the last 3 years. So this is a huge amount of capital which needs to be tapped. What we also know about Islamic finance is that about 97% of Islamic financial assets are in the banking sector. So there's not much which has gone into investments, into equities or insurance or whatever. And here to discuss why this is happening and what is it that can be done to encourage Islamic finance to also enter the angel investment space. So we have a distinguished panel of experts who will give their views on what can be done to attract this huge pool of money. We have His Excellency Sheikh Ibrahim bin Khalifa, who's been introduced this morning. But just quickly to repeat, he's an ex-Minister of Housing in the Kingdom of Bahrain. He was also the Deputy Governor of Bahrain Central Bank and the Chairman of the Bahrain Development Bank, and more importantly, he is chairman of AOFI, which is the Accounting and Audit Standards Organization for Islamic Finance. That's also based in Bahrain. So we'll hear his views on that. Then we have a private banker, which is Malik Shah, who is the CEO, as we heard, of Al Baraka Bank in Turkey. Al Baraka is one of the largest Islamic financial institutions globally. So we'll have his perspective of how we can attract that investment pool for angel investment to promote the development of SMEs. And then last but not the least, we have a multilateral agency or institution called the Islamic Development Bank, represented by Hamad Zafar, who will give us the perspective of what is the Islamic Development Bank doing in this space. But before I move to the panel, I would just like to add a few things of how IFC is helping generally the Islamic finance space over the last 3 or 4 years. And the reason we are doing that is that the World Bank Group also recognized that there is this huge pool of funds available for development. And in the case of banking, the issue there, by the way, was that there were not enough structured products which could target small and medium enterprises in countries where actually there's also a demand for Sharia compliant products. So we've been helping banks and financial institutions in that space over the last 3 or 4 years to develop financing products which are Sharia compliant but targeting small and medium enterprises. But the funny thing actually on Islamic finance for angel investment is that there is no restriction on the products itself, because investing into a company or providing equity is already Sharia compliant. And again, I won't talk too much on that. We have our experts who speak on that topic. So can I start with His Excellency Sheikh Ibrahim, if you could share with us your thoughts that how can we encourage this pool of funds to also join this community of angel investors?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much, Mr. Naseem. Let me just add to what you have said, to our thanks and appreciation for Mr. Weber's Altantash and for the World Business Angels for all what they have arranged and made it available for us. To go back to Islamic banking, as you mentioned, I am the chairman of the IOFI, which is the largest Islamic financial organization in the world now. We are entrusted with a heavy mission. While we are seeing the growth, as you have said, especially in the liability side in the financial institutions, Islamic or non-Islamic, anybody who sells Islamic is going at 15 and even further than that % of growth, where we see sometimes in some banks 90% of their deposits is coming from Islamic on Islamic Sharia compliant, and on the asset side they wouldn't be able even to do 10 or 15. So we ask, where would the money have gone? Ernst & Young checked that, and they found that in the by Islamic banks in the London market there is $500 billion. We are, if you are asking, have we done enough or even near the enough for the small and medium businesses, or with the so-called now recently MSM, we are nowhere near. Because if you look at that, we have no shortage of money. If you look at the Waqf fund in the Islamic world, this is another study by somebody who's from the IDB who's living here. I think that he's gone now. It is $1.3 trillion. And where is it? It's completely not there. So here, when you go to the Islamic countries, and when you see that total Muslims is approaching now very close to 2 billion human beings, no wonder half of them is Hanafi, like the three gentlemen, except me. Yeah, and they are one sect. And when you go there, whether the people generally that who's coming to you is people of the lower income. And those people will never come if the money is not halal. You know in Pakistan, you know in Turkey, I know in Central Asia, and you know in Africa. In Africa today is something like 850 million people. They will be 1.4 by 2030. Arab people were something like 180 million. By 2030, they will be 650 million. Now, do I have to tell you about Pakistan because I'm the chairman of the bank there? It is now approaching 250 million people there. And if you think the need is there, of course it is, and growing. We are racing against time. So one of the IOFI projects, with the help with the UNIDO and the RSET, is to put a structure, a firm structure of what papers have called today is smart investment. It is not advancing the money. It is give the supporting things into that. We are working very hard to put this structure forward. It will go through a lot of hearing stages, whether Sharia or accounting or ethic or governance, to reach a point that which will be acceptable by the others. The aim is to make Bahrain is the center for Islamic small and medium institution finance into that. We are racing against time. We are way behind, but hopefully we'll reach with your help.
Well, thank you very much. And I think you made a very valid point in terms of the demand for Sharia compliant. And like you said, we worked a lot in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan over the last years. You talk about Central Asia, where also there's a demand and the structures are not there. But having said that, I mean, when we talk about angel investment, so we're not really trying to develop a product, because the product is there, which is the funding, which is the money. So Malik Shah, Could we have your views on why do you think that this Islamic funding, Islamic finance, or Islamic pool of funds is not being channeled towards such investments? And what can be done to channel it to those?
I mean, essentially, this is a learning process. I mean, we're talking here. I've been here since the morning, and angel investors are still talking why angel investment hasn't taken off. So I think this is definitely a learning stage. Islamic banking in Turkey, it's been like 33 years now, and in most of the regions, it hasn't been past 50 years. So what initially has been done was to try to promote and get financial inclusion on the deposit side. So the under the bed, under the pillow savings, those were attempted, first of all. Those were the segments of the population that Islamic banks tried to go to. I think we have been able to succeed into that. Like Sheikh here said, we have been able to get financial inclusion on the deposit side, people who wouldn't work with banks, to work with Islamic banks and bring their savings. What we couldn't do is to allocate those resources in other ways other than murabaha. The methodology whereby we finance essentially working capital requirements through real transactions, obviously, but still it's essentially working capital requirements. Unlike in the GCC region, in Turkey, we have been very much linked to the SMEs. I mean, a major portion of our portfolio has been SME, has always been SMEs in Turkey. But the problem with SMEs, very much like angel investment, that we've been seeing that talked about, is because they're not institutionalized, because they haven't worked with banks before, they don't have any credit information, they don't have any, the financials do not look very good, at least on paper. So you start small with them and establish that relationship over long term. I think, and Murabaha methodology, allows you to do that piece by piece and in very short periods. Unlike angel investments, where we have been people have been talking about exit strategies. You don't have that problem with Murabaha, especially with people who you don't know anything about. So I think that methodology, that product was the sheer driver for Islamic banking on the asset side. But obviously, many criticism from the population and nowadays also from the governments are coming, saying that Islamic banking should also concentrate on equity finance, which is where the normal Islamic business is usually. And as Al-Baraka, I think with regards to Musharaka and Mudaraba projects, we have around 10% of our portfolio into those projects. So very much like a JV, we also have JV products, which is, I think, we're probably the leaders in the Islamic banking sector with regards to that area. But these are not small companies. These JVs that we have entered, they're not startups. They're real estate projects, usually things that you can actually measure, know, and get to learn it. The good thing about it is that we've now learned how to equity finance. So, I mean, you can start big, you can start into real estate, but definitely start somewhere to get to learn it, because it has a learning process, like I said. And we have established, for example, even for real estate, it's not easy to exit, because you always have a portion that is not sold for a long period of time. For example, we established a portfolio company for them to take over the remaining stocks. And we have listed that in the stock exchange, for example. So that, in effect, has provided an exit strategy for us. We're doing the same thing with a startup fund now, but we also want to incorporate the know-how, learning portion. That is why we established an incubation center, first of all, before we actually started the startup fund. In order to get to know the actual requirements, we also need to provide them with the know-how and the consultancy they need. So it is a joint process. It's not just about financing. I think from now on, I think people lead by example. I think we will be able to provide an example for the other Islamic banks. We're also thinking about working with the angel networks with regards to bringing in their expertise and knowledge of the system and maybe incorporate them into these funds that we're establishing.
Great, thank you very much. Well, if I understood, you said two things which I think are very relevant. One is that the issues perhaps are the same as for a bank in terms of assessing the risk. So I think that's one issue that an angel investor or an investor would face even if it's Islamic funding. The second you spoke about is the learning curve, which is true. I mean, you've got to learn in anything you do, but investments have been going on for a while, and Islamic funding is also going into investments. But how do you do it in an institutionalized manner is the question. And we know that institutions like Islamic Development Bank are working a lot in this area of how do you build these structures, how do you come up with methodologies for risk assessment or risk mitigation, and also how do you educate both the investor and the investee. So I'd like to ask Hamad Zafar that what do you have in mind for this particular part of the market, which is angel investments?
Thank you very much. I mean, for us, the motivation is also important because, as you know, we are an Islamic development bank, so part of it is Islamic and part of it is development. So we have to look at our development mandate. What is the motivation for contributing to angel investment or startups and such? The motivation is that a lot of our member countries are facing this middle income trap, you know, whereby unless they invest heavily in raising the productive potential of the economy, you cannot graduate to the next level. So I think that's where our motivation is. So we want to help them not only in meeting those challenges which are related to the middle income, but also in some of the perennial development challenges, such as in energy, in access to clean water, etc. So what we have been doing is, like has been discussed, you know, the products are there, equity is itself Sharia compliant, but what lacks is an institutional mechanism. So, for example, we very successfully utilized Mudaraba here in Turkey with the likes of TSKB and Turkexim to access relatively smaller companies or smaller renewable energy projects. And we leveraged their expertise and capacity to actually screen and monitor the implementation of those projects. So I think what is important here for us is that we are able to, like has been mentioned, that we are all on a learning curve. We are able to develop such structures and institutional mechanisms whereby we have capable executing agencies which can help us in actually reaching out to the early stage startups, maybe focused on technology, which brings us closer to this angel investment. You know, we are working on that. For example, recently, our management has decided to launch a science, technology, and innovation fund and a platform. The fund is about $500 million, out of which IDB and ISFD, the Islamic Solidarity Fund for Development, have already contributed about $200 million, and the rest we are looking for all from our other partners. And within that, we will be you know, looking for local partners in each of our member countries, for example, TUBITAC, CostGap, other you know, participation banks, which have access to existing angel networks, or they have, you know, they have partnerships with technoparks, etc. And we can rely on their expertise, their capacity to actually, you know, screen those risks and to an extent monitor and nurture the early stage startups. So this is what IDB is doing. We are, you know, as I mentioned, that we are very much focused on supporting innovation, but throughout its whole, you know, cycle and the value chain and the whole ecosystem, and not just on one end. Where we have faced challenges is that in certain countries, we get an institution which is working on it, for example, TUBITAC here, but it has been focused on more or less only supporting the very early stage idea generation. And now it is thinking about launching some funds with the help of, for example, EIF, the Turkish Treasury, which is an encouraging sign. So that is where we see that there could be a potential for a partnership.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. In hindsight, actually, it would have been very useful if we had a fourth panel member from the Angel Investors Network, actually. The question I would have asked is, what is being done by the network so far to reach out to such investors with Islamic funding? But maybe someone from the audience can answer that. So we are going to propose. We have about 9 minutes left. So before I wrap up, are there any questions from the floor? I don't see any on the screen. Andrew or anyone? Any? Sorry? No. Please, yeah.
Please, yeah.
Yes, thank you. My name is Hashim Hussein. Well, I think it is very high time now for Islamic finance to work on micro and small and medium businesses. In the last 15 years, we have been talking about microfinance itself. Even there are a lot of universities, especially the University of Rome, that have found that the essence of microfinance is Islamic finance, okay? Because they don't ask for collaterals and so on. Now we're coming to the business angels, and this is what I have been talking to my friend or my colleague, and I'm very happy that I've been convinced, and we have this panel. We have been talking to him that we have been working with IOFI for the last 3-4 years to ensure that IOFI and the Muftis agrees, on that the money of zakah and waqf can be not used only for charity, because zakah, if I use the word in Arabic, was ighna al-fuqara, enrich the poor, not to provide them with charity. We have gone long way now with IOFI that they're agreeing, that's it. So now we're coming to the business angel, and we're saying the business angel, there is no riba into it, that I invest, profit is profit, lose I lose. It is completely Islamic finance. So I think, for me, this is a historical moment that we're bringing Al-Barakah. Also, we're signing now an MOU with Al-Barakah for all Barakah branches in their headquarters in Bahrain. We provide what we call the non-financial services, okay? And Al-Barakah will provide the financial services on different financial terms. So I think we're moving very fast, but now we have to institutionalize this. So now the recommendation, this is why Sheikh Ibrahim have just announced that we're working, as you know, Bahrain is a financial hub, for the whole MENA region. Now we are institutionalizing the Islamic Business Angels Bahrain to be a center. We're talking to the Kuwait Finance House, to Al-Barakah, to Ismar, and they're all agreeing with us. So I hope next year we're going to have a panel to report on that there is of course, the Islamic Development Bank is also a very good partner. We've been working with them a lot. But now we want to institutionalize this. So I hope next year, Mr. Naseem, we'll see you back to do reporting on what have happened. So next year, inshallah, we're going to have another panel. And thank you for you all. I was very delighted to hear and to see that even Bank Al-Barakah is even going more into incubator and so on in Turkey. I will go and tell Adnan Yusuf there that you have a good experience here in Turkey. Thank you.
Is there any other question from the floor? So just to your... There is a question, okay.
The question is on the screen. Can you see them?
Oh, okay, I can't see them on the screen. I can put on the screen. How are Islamic banks collaborating with angel investors to improve early stage financing? Islamic banks collaborating with angel investors. I think you covered some of it.
I mean, up until now, they haven't been doing that. So, like I said, from now on, I think it is going to be more important that we do work with angel investors, whether through networks or through inviting them to the funds.
The next question is there a strategy to spread these entrepreneurship supports abroad of Turkey for Al-Barakah? Again, Al-Barakah. So this entrepreneurship strategy is going to go to third countries, fourth countries?
Definitely. I mean, first of all, we do have We're working together with Bahrain Incubation Center, FinTech Incubation Center. We have also invested in Bahrain as Al Baraka Turk. As the group there, but also as Al Baraka Turk, because we also believe Bahrain is a good financial hub for the GCC. With regards to fintechs also, not just the Islamic banks. We're also taking all our garage members to all the panels that we go. Wherever there are investors, we take them with us so that we make sure that we have some exit strategy.
So there's one question which I'll answer actually, because we're working a lot on that, and that is that how do you view a fintech, and is it more aligned with the spirit of Sharia? So actually, you know, like I said earlier, IFC is working with several Islamic banks on the conventional banking side of how they can develop products targeting SMEs. That has been an issue, but this isn't the subject of our discussion today. It's more of angel investment. But since it had come up, so we already are doing that. And that is really a pain point, because conventional, Islamic banks did not really have products which match the needs and requirements of SMEs, because they have very specific needs and requirements, how it's structured. So we've worked with 3 or 4 banks in Saudi. We worked with the bank in Oman, Bank Muscat. We're working with the bank which His Excellency is the chairman of in Pakistan for supply chain finance, Al-Mizan Bank. Fintech solutions have yet to be developed which are Sharia compliant. I've seen a few which claim that they are Sharia compliant for supply chain or for trade finance, but frankly I have not seen a fatwa, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, by a Sharia board that this fintech, and I see Hussain Isham laughing, maybe he can also comment on that, it's Sharia compliant, but it's not really Sharia compliant. Is that true? I mean, do you have a view on that?
Why would you have compliant?
Because the way they structure the product, which is delivered digitized, I'm talking about a fintech, which is digitized the process. So the digitized process is not Sharia compliant because it's not based on a murahaba or mudarba or whatever structure there is for Islamic. There are 3 or 4, I don't know if you know of them in Dubai, which claim to be Sharia compliant, but they're not having much traction.
Well, they have to look into that, because
Yeah.
I know in Bahrain, Osama Al-Khaja, he's the commissioner for Bahrain, for the World Business Angel. He couldn't come. He's working on Islamic fintech, and actually he's in Dubai because there is a big conference in Bahrain. There's a big conference on that. Maybe we have to address that question to him. He's developing a Sharia compliance fintech.
Yeah.
That's it? Okay.
And in Bahrain, I think it's actually this conference. So it's in development.
This gentleman is a partner at Ernst & Young, and he have been working with us, with IOFI, and to develop the fintech for the Islamic financial institution. As a matter of fact, as I told you, that on the 19th of March, we have a meeting in Karachi, whereby the University of Business School, IBA, yeah, will host a main conference onto that. The speed of the high tech into the banking industry in the Indian continent, in this 6 countries, Pakistan, Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka, is so high into that. I'm telling you this because I forget, and forgive me for that, to tell you that I am the chairman also of Dan Bradstreet in this area. The demand on us is heavy. One of the issues that many people here was talking about, if we have a small or an entrepreneurship company, after 2 years, how we sell, how we buy, we run Lasmira in India, because that will make it what Mr. Brad has said, that the value of it will be established after 6 months. So he can sell and buy and get in, get out from that. It is under trial. Once the government, the State Bank of India approve that, you will find it everywhere. So we are, because you see that the problem is not whether you would like or not. Time and the development of it is so fast that you wouldn't be able to be the loser in this game.
No, absolutely. So it's work in progress. And the gentleman you talked about, Ashir Nazim, is the one I mentioned. That's what I meant. I think we'll run out of time, so I'll just quickly wrap up the session. And it's going to be easy to wrap it up. I think we got very enlightening views from our excellent panel members. But it's work in progress. Basically, I think the issue is that the funding is there, the money is there. It's just how do you educate these investors to start looking at these type of investments, innovative fintechs, higher risk. So how do you de-risk those investments before you invest in that? So the learning curve that we spoke about, I don't think there's an issue of developing a product for angel investors because the product definitely is there. The Mudarba and the Musharka are ready-made products which fit perfectly with Sharia compliance. So I think with that, I would like to thank my panel members for their excellent views and thank the audience for the excellent questions. And that's it. We end this.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.